He didn't need a tunnel. He didn't need a smuggled phone or a bribed guard. All he needed was an empty stomach and the courage to say enough is enough. Across the United States, prison cafeterias have become battlegrounds. Not because of gang rivalries or contraband drugs, but because the very food meant to keep inmates alive was being systematically stolen, skimmed, and sold for profit by the very people paid to serve it. This is the story of food wars in American prisons, ration scams that turned dining halls into war zones in California, Texas, New York, Alabama, Ohio, and beyond. The American prison food system was never designed to be generous. But in the last 15 years it became something far worse, a quiet profit machine. Private contractors such as Aramark, Trinity Services Group, and others took over feeding contracts in more than 30 states. Their mandate was simple: on paper, feed thousands of inmates every day while staying under tight per-meal budgets set by state governments. In practice, those budgets often fell to less than $2.50 per inmate per day. That number proved impossible to meet honestly, so corners were cut. Portions shrank. Quality collapsed. And officers and kitchen staff discovered they could make the math work in their favor by shorting trays and pocketing the difference or selling excess food on the side. In California's Corcoran State Prison, inmates began documenting the decline in real time. Trays that once carried a full serving of chicken or beef suddenly arrived with half the protein and almost no vegetables. The same pattern repeated in Texas prisons around Huntsville and Beaumont, where meat and bread portions mysteriously got smaller week after week. At New York's notorious Rikers Island, detainees watched commissary prices climb while the official meals became almost inedible, cold, undercooked, or simply missing. In Alabama, the scam was even more blatant. One county sheriff was later arrested and jailed inside his own facility after a federal judge discovered he had pocketed more than $212,000 over 3 years by deliberately underfeeding inmates and pocketing the leftover meal money as personal income. The practice was so common that it even had a name among staff: the food hustle. The meal system breakdowns were not isolated mistakes. They were systemic. Contractors faced pressure to cut costs while states faced pressure to appear tough on crime. The easiest target was always the inmate's tray. In many facilities, breakfast consisted of a single muffin that arrived stone cold. Lunch might be a spoonful of mystery meat and a few wilted vegetables. Dinner often looked like leftovers from the previous day. Inmates began to weigh their trays on homemade scales made from rubber bands and plastic spoons just to prove they were being shorted. Grievances piled up. Hunger strikes followed. But when those complaints were ignored or punished, frustration turned into organized rage. The hook of this story is brutally simple. Officers' side hustles ignited full-scale chaos. What started as petty theft in the kitchen became open theft in the dining hall, and the inmates noticed every single time. In Cuyahoga County Jail in Cleveland, Ohio, corrections officers sent urgent internal emails warning administrators that the food contractor was serving meals so bad they looked like vomit. One corporal wrote, "If this continues, they're going to end up causing a riot in our jail." His prediction came true within weeks. A small argument over a missing portion exploded into a cafeteria riot. Inmates flipped tables, hurled trays, and clashed with responding officers. Dozens were injured on both sides. Similar incidents erupted across the country with frightening regularity. In Alabama's Marshall County Jail, 7 inmates rioted in 2017 after discovering their meals had been systematically reduced for months. In Washington's Coyote Ridge Correction Center near Connell, hundreds of prisoners launched a coordinated hunger strike in 2019 because breakfast muffins arrived cold and undersized for months on end. In Texas facilities near Huntsville and Beaumont, food-related disturbances became so common that administrators began tracking cafeteria incidents as a separate category. At Rikers Island in New York City, more than 200 detainees refused institutional meals in January 2022 and survived only on commissary items to protest both staffing shortages and terrible food quality. The protest drew citywide attention and forced officials to admit the meal system had effectively collapsed. The escalation factors were always the same. Chronic underfeeding created constant irritability and desperation. Visible officer profiteering destroyed any remaining trust between inmates and staff. Overcrowding meant that a single dispute in the chow line could involve dozens or hundreds of people in seconds. Lack of fresh vegetables and adequate protein also led to serious health problems: vitamin deficiencies, weight loss, and weakened immune systems that made inmates even more volatile. When a tray arrived short or cold, it was no longer just a bad meal. It was the final insult in a system that already treated people as profit centers rather than human beings. The timelines of these riots tell the same story over and over. A small complaint in the cafeteria line. A guard telling inmates to shut up and eat what you're given. A single tray slammed on the floor. Then the floodgates opened. In one California facility, a minor argument over a missing piece of chicken turned into a full-scale riot within minutes. Inmates overturned tables, smashed plastic chairs, and fought with responding officers using whatever was at hand. Similar scenes played out in Texas, Alabama, and Ohio. Injuries were widespread and brutal. Officers were assaulted with food trays and fists. Inmates suffered broken bones, concussions, and deep lacerations from shattered plastic and metal. Some ended up in hospital wings with serious trauma. Lockdowns lasted for days while investigators tried to piece together who started what and why. The financial cost to taxpayers was staggering. Damaged cafeteria equipment, overtime pay for staff, emergency medical bills, and increased security measures all added up. Yet the real cost was human. Every riot left scars, physical and psychological, on both sides of the bars. Families outside heard stories of loved ones going hungry or getting hurt over a spoonful of food. Prison administrators faced public outrage and lawsuits. And still the underlying incentives remained unchanged. When the chaos finally drew sustained public attention, officials had no choice but to respond. In California, several facilities increased portion sizes and restored hot meals after prolonged hunger strikes drew media coverage. In New York, Rikers Island administrators promised better oversight of food contractors and introduced stricter portion checks. In Ohio's Cuyahoga County Jail, officials replaced the problematic vendor and began independent audits of meal weights. Many states introduced body cameras in kitchens, hotlines for inmates to report shorted trays, and in some cases switched back to in-house food preparation to cut out profiteering middlemen. But the fixes were often temporary. As soon as media attention faded and budgets remained tight, old habits returned. Contractors found new ways to cut corners. Officers found new ways to skim. The food wars in American prisons are not ancient history. They continue today in facilities from California's Corcoran State Prison to Texas prisons in Huntsville and Beaumont, from New York's Rikers Island to Alabama county jails and Washington state facilities. Every new incident is a reminder that when you take away a person's dignity at mealtime, you create chaos that no amount of razor wire, cameras, or lockdowns can contain. The next cafeteria riot is only one stolen portion away. The next hunger strike is only one cold muffin away. And the question that remains is painfully simple. How many more times will we allow officers' side hustles and contractor profiteering to turn prison dining halls into battlegrounds before we finally fix the system that feeds the incarcerated? This has been the story of Prison Hack, Food Wars in America. Cafeteria riots sparked by ration scams that expose the rotten core of how we feed the people we lock away. The hunger is real. The anger is real. And the next tray that arrives short could be the one that starts it all over again.